Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum, namaste, Sasri Akal. My name is Farheen Khan and you're watching the AZEEZA show. This week we're actually going to talk about something that I think is really important, and that is talking about the provincial cuts to social services and to many other things that we really, I think many of us don't know what's going on. So for a better understanding of what's happening, I'm really pleased to introduce our guest today, Jill Andrew, MPP, St. Paul, Toronto St. Paul. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So Jill, we've known each other from before your political time. Yes. So maybe you could just start with telling us a little bit about yourself and what the journey's been like.
Right. Well, for me, the journey started quite a while ago, contemplating and deciding whether or not I would enter the realm of public service in this way.
Right.
I was encouraged by some really inspiring people, some of whom were politicians. And as they'd say, the rest was history, or is history. I came into politics with a background firmly in education,
right,
and community advocacy around body image and women's and girls' rights and empowerment,
right,
that sort of thing. And now I get to bring my equity, education, women's and girls' empowerment, arts, culture. I get to bring it all together,
right,
as a new MPP and also as the culture critic for the official opposition.
That's wonderful. Well, I mean, we're very proud of you for what you're doing, and thank you for being that voice for us in the legislature. So tell us a little bit about this bill that we've been hearing about that you've introduced.
Right. So Bill 61 is my first private member's bill.
Right.
It's a bill to get the first week of February recognized officially in Ontario as Eating Disorders Awareness Week.
Okay.
And the goal of the bill is to raise awareness around eating disorders or eating problems, and frankly, the full gamut of body image issues.
Right, which is exactly what you were sort of working on before. Right?
Exactly, with Body Confidence Canada and girls' conferences, particularly conferences I had produced for Black and Indigenous girls who are often not centered, sadly, in any curriculum.
Right.
But really the bill is about education. It's around awareness raising, and also around, or hopefully it'll help facilitate conversations around prevention and intervention.
Right.
Really, 1 million Canadians live with eating disorders. 90+% of people have problems with their body image.
For sure. For sure.
We have 1,000 to 1,500 people who are dying each year of EDs, and we have about 500,000 people living right here in Ontario fighting this. So it's a real issue. Eating disorders don't discriminate. And for my bill, what's unique about the bill is I am asking that we really center culturally relevant resources. So we know we need more funding, we know we need more beds for inpatient care, but we also have to be mindful of who is delivering services and whether or not they are reflective of the diverse communities that are also impacted with body image issues.
For sure, because not everybody's experience is the same.
Exactly. So I debated the bill in December of 2018. It received unanimous party support across party lines, which doesn't always happen.
No, of course.
So now we're in committee. Hopefully third reading goes well, and we'll have that week proclaimed.
Wonderful.
That's the hope. Yeah,
that's great.
So
excellent.
We'll see.
So how has it been with, I know that a lot, we've been hearing sort of the rumblings of what's happening, and a lot of stuff is coming out in the media, but I don't think people really understand to what extent, these changes that are coming from the Ford government are impacting the people, day-to-day people's lives, right? Can we really talk about that a little bit?
We can, I'll start with education, just to give a few hits as to what's happening.
Right.
When Doug Ford cuts $25 million, out of schools, when he cuts $100 million out of school repairs, when he, challenges and wants to remove full day kindergarten, for instance, this has a direct impact on our students. Students learn better in smaller classrooms. They learn better with more teachers, not less teachers. And we need specialized classes. We need curriculum that reflects today.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're fully aware of the sex ed curriculum and the battle that that's been.
Right.
You know, we need, you know, health and physical education curriculum from the 21st century.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
addresses online issues, you know,
For sure.
cyberbullying, consent issues, healthy relationships.
Consent is huge.
Yeah, the things that are going to help, you know, take our kids forward.
For
and
sure.
not backward.
For sure.
So education, you know, that's been something that we've been battling, you know, with the Doug Ford government, the progressive conservatives,
Right.
you know, and their unwillingness to consult with communities,
Right.
to consult with educators, with parents, and with students. And you know, what's been really impressive is to see the thousands of students across Ontario and right at Queen's Park on our lawn who show up every time to fight for their right for democracy when it comes to their education. You know, we also saw, you know, Indigenous writing curriculum sessions,
Right, I heard about
you
that.
know, cut.
Cut.
Like,
Yeah.
how do we explain having schools across our province that are serving diverse populations, but aren't keeping up-to-date curriculum on whether it be, you know, persons of African descent, whether it be LGBT persons, whether it be Indigenous persons, you know what I mean? We have to do better.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're striving to do. We're striving to take Ontario forward and not backwards the way the PC government seems to be hell-bent on, you know?
And
so
then-
it's tough. It's tough to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're seeing it day to day, right? Like
Absolutely.
You're right there on the front lines.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Wow.
You know, if we look at women, you know,
Yes.
we're talking about we're talking about women's safety. We're talking about respecting survivors,
Yeah.
and that is not something the PC, you know, government. Doug Ford is not respecting survivors when they, you know, suspend funding
Right.
to rape crisis centers.
Right.
You know, women are waiting for months
Already,
for support.
as it is,
already
on the wait
as
list.
it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't get any
I was at
better
the
for them.
Yeah, where I used to work at the rape crisis centers, the women's shelters. Absolutely,
Yes.
there's already long wait lists. And
Absolutely.
they're already working on shoestring budgets. I mean, I knew that this was going to happen when I heard about the impacts to status of women in Canada, all of these, status
The
of women
round
on
table.
yeah, the round tables, and you know the provincial status, and all of this, right? Like looking at this and thinking that, oh my goodness, something's really going to happen in terms of funding, because a lot of these organizations, particularly the rape crisis centers, are so heavily funded by the province, right? So to start to cut that, it's just like,
Well,
unheard
you know,
of.
when you cut these, you know, and I call them core services.
Right,
You know,
absolutely.
It is a core service
I agree.
for anybody that's impacted by sexual assault to be able to get resources today.
Right.
Not 7 months from now.
No, I agree.
You know, there are certain centers that have reported, you know, 100% increase in their crisis line phone calls. You know, there's no question that services are needed and help is
Absolutely.
needed.
Yeah.
And, you know, Doug Ford, you know, and his PC caucus, and, you know, being hell-bent on suspending those increases that were
Right.
promised.
right.
You know, this is a huge step backwards
For sure.
for women who are trying to, you know, get out of situations of violence.
For sure.
Yeah.
What other kind of implications are there with respect to, or what other sort of impacts have there been to women in particular?
You know, I was quite floored by the cancellation of the basic income program.
Right.
That was an earlier coup
Right.
by the PC government. And what was very interesting about that is many people who are on that program are women.
Right.
You know, there are people with ODSP, OW, people who are marginalized, people
Right.
who are already at the periphery. You know, having a program pulled from underneath them, right?
Yeah.
A program that ethically wasn't ended ethically.
No,
you
for
know.
sure.
So it's been one thing after the next
Right.
with this government. You know, I find myself consistently going, oh, there he goes again. You know,
Right.
making things worse
Right.
for people in Ontario. And I firmly believe, and you know, our NDP official opposition believes that Ontarians deserve better.
For sure.
You know, we don't deserve hallway medicine. You know, we don't deserve our public health care, you know,
Right.
turning into some sort of a, private for-profit entity.
Right, we heard about that, the leaks of the...
As someone who lives with chronic health, and even my own hallway medicine stories were part of my inspiration, or should I say part of the angst that pushed me into getting into politics, because I didn't want people to experience what I experienced and what I know countless other Ontarians are experiencing. And when we meddle with our frontline care, that has serious implications for seniors, for women, for children,
for youth,
for youth, for everybody that's seeking, at your darkest hour, you need supports. And you don't need to have to worry as to whether or not those frontline services are being doled out behind closed doors to for-profit entities. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back. Okay, we'll just take a quick break. Hi everyone, welcome back. We're just talking with Jill Andrew about MPP for Toronto St. Paul, about the cuts to social services and other cuts that are happening by the Ford government and the impact that that has on everyday people. So Jill, we were just talking before the break, we've talked about the impacts on women, the cuts to, various cuts to education. What about cuts to programming around like post-secondary education? Well, as you know, the government has eliminated free tuition for low-income students. So this government is hell-bent on making it difficult for low-income and middle-income students. We've heard from students who have had grants now transferred into loans. We also understand that, Doug Ford has decided to remove the 6-month free interest. So the minute you graduate, you are incurring debt,
terrible.
Right? Which makes it really hard as a student to, even think about, your professional career. You don't even have a job yet and you've got this debt hanging over your head.
For sure.
And that has longer term implications. We want our young people to, jump into the home ownership market. Things like that are just really difficult to negotiate, or starting families, or helping their families, right? Because I certainly did that when I was in school, and many students take great pride in being able to help family, but it's hard to do that when you're leaving with that boulder hanging over your head.
Absolutely.
So it's a tough situation all around.
I remember working at the Student Loan Center for federal and provincial in Ontario, and the number of students that were defaulting even after the 6-month grace period because they weren't able to secure proper employment.
Well, this is it.
Was significant, right, in terms of the number. So to think that you're coming right into it and you're immediately starting to, accrue interest and have to make payments, that's just really very concerning.
And we, the government also rolled back on their on the increase for minimum wage. So for many, they're also starting jobs that aren't economically viable.
No, not at all. Even $15, is that a livable wage, right? I would say not.
I'd say not.
Exactly. Like it's extremely difficult. Just as a small example, like after I ran in 2015, I was, I just needed to get back into the market, and I took something at that rate, and to think that that's livable is just ridiculous. It's just not, even if it's temporary, whatever the case may be. For people, it's so difficult. Like, how can you expect to pay your rent, go and, pay your expenses, have a car and actually use it, and purchase groceries is just very difficult.
Exactly, and this is the thing, the government, the PC government will say, oh, well, we're doing tuition decreases. But the reality is, they're not really, they're not helping the situation, because it doesn't speak to the, $300 or something million that universities are losing, the $80 million that colleges are using. So there might be a little decrease, but then it's probably going to fly through the roof come 2021. Right. So again, it's this notion of deception. I've found that as as a thread, as a new MPP. That is something that I have witnessed. That happens during Queen's Park. It happens during question period, I should say more specifically. Just this sense of deception where the government, announces these things with very little to no consultation. It's deals cooked up behind closed doors. And, as an Ontarian, if I'm sitting at home, I want to be able to trust that my government, even if it's not a government that I may believe in, party lines, but at least they'll be transparent. At least I'll have a say. I'll be at the table. I'll be consulted. For sure. And it's just not happening that way. It's not, if we look at the arts councils, my office, as culture critic, we've been very vocal against the Ontario Arts Council base funding cuts. We were very vocal around the Indigenous Culture Fund cuts, which also came with cuts to the Indigenous Culture Fund staff, which were all Indigenous women. So there's a there's a message in there as well too about how important women's economic sustainability appears to be to this government. And the outcry was immense. In our community. Across the province, we received hundreds, if not more than that, of signatures with people saying, reinstate, reinstate the base funding, maintain our ICF. Like, this was not just some promise from the sky. This was part of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. So, we see as well that Indigenous communities and their issues are not front and center to the Ford government.
For sure, when I saw the way in which they've been paired, the ministries, maybe tell us a little bit about that.
It's like omnibus ministries.
Well, exactly, right?
You've got Minister Lisa MacLeod, who's Minister of everything under the sun, right? And of course we have no ministry for Indigenous affairs.
No, it's just been coupled in with the Ministry of Mining and all of this.
To me, that sends a strong message to Ontarians about the importance or lack thereof of First Peoples. I think we need to have standalone ministries.
For sure.
It's sort of like the way in which, mental health as well. We've seen cuts to mental health, $330 million to the tune of that. The cuts to mental health, the need for a standalone ministry for mental health and addictions is real.
For sure, absolutely.
We can't just sort of piecemeal mental health across the ministries. It's life or death for many people. We've seen the opioid crisis. We've seen that up close and personal. And it's important, that the PC government realize that, as government, they need to answer to us, to Ontarians.
For sure.
As official opposition, it's our job to keep them accountable. We're working hand in hand with community. Community's leading the way, quite frankly, to do that and to get that job done. But the progressive Conservatives need to answer to Ontarians, and they are not. You've got ministers, refusing to answer questions on calls about the rape crisis centers and their suspended funding. You've got ministers, saying that there aren't changes to healthcare and, denying things, yet cabinets have signed off on bills. It's all of this lack of transparency. It's very concerning. And that's, the majority of emails we get, phone calls, letters to our office, is Jill, what can we do? We're feeling like, what's coming next? There's something new every hour or new every day. And it's things that are taking Ontario backwards.
And what about the Anti-Racism Directorate?
Yes,
that was another piece,
that was another piece that was, dismantled, essentially. We need a fully resourced and funded anti-racism directorate in order to, you know, to continue the work of the Anti-Racism Secretariat, you know, which was valiantly advocated for and essentially, you know, brought to fruition by the former NDP MPP Zanena Conde.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So this is in our roots, you know, as NDP, you know, it's in our roots to tackle racism, Islamophobia, all of the isms and phobias that attack our most vulnerable communities.
For sure.
And, you know, particularly in a climate where, you know, we are seeing the complicated, to say the least, relationships that are happening with communities of color and law enforcement, you know, specifically around Black lives and whether they matter or not. I mean, that seems to be the ongoing question. We need an anti-racism directorate to really be able to stamp out anti-Black racism and to look at issues like carding.
Right.
And not just look at them, but eradicate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not just about, you know, talking around it and, you know, saying what sounds good as a soundbite. We need to actually eliminate the unconstitutional practice of carding.
For sure.
You know, and we need to shred the names of all those who have been racially profiled and stopped for no other good reason than this color of our skin.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's disgusting.
For sure. Wow.
So, I mean, I'm often asked, well, what can I do? You know, should I get involved? Is it so bad that I shouldn't get involved?
Right.
You know, I don't sugarcoat things. It's tough, and it's going to be a tough few years as official opposition.
Right.
But what we have to do is galvanize. You know, we've got to continue to work hard with community. To any young person watching, or to any person across the age spectrum watching who's wondering, should I get involved? The answer is yes. You know, as I say to people often, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yes.
And we can't afford to have Ontario eaten up and chewed and spit out by Doug Ford and his caucus. So we have to get involved, and we have to make it work. And we have to make government in 2022. That's my plan.
For sure. Well, thank you, Jill, for
for
being here. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Please extend our thanks to the rest of your caucus as well. Like, you know, what you're doing is really commendable, and
thank you.
Whatever we can do to support you, we're here for you.
Thank you very much, Farheen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. Well, that gives you some more information on what's really going on in terms of cuts and how it's going to impact us, and the importance of getting involved. So looking forward to seeing you next week. Take care.